Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and we've got an awesome episode in store for you here today. An incredible conversation with a guest who I've been so excited to connect with. Her name is Emma Wihtol. She is the founder of Frame Marketing, where she creates content and manages various client social media accounts. Before that, she's done everything in the world of marketing, not just social. She was a digital marketing intern for Sky Society, where she did everything from write SEO, optimize blog posts, to managing influencer campaigns. When she's not working, you can probably find her on her way up the mountains or planning her next travel adventure. Emma has so much passion for social media, and especially, this is the topic I'm excited about, social media growth. Because how many of us look at our social media accounts and we say, well, it's just not growing. I'm not getting in front of new people. So that's why I'm so excited. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview today with Emma Wihtol. All right, Emma, here we are. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Hey, Brian. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Heck yeah, and I'm going to give a shout out to you, Emma. I know we said it before we hit record today, but listeners won't realize you are doing this interview at 8:30 a.m. You're coming to us from the Pacific Northwest, so I'm grateful that you're here with us. Let's take us beyond the bio, though. Who the heck is Emma? How did you get here? How did you fall into what you're doing with Frame Marketing?
Yeah, totally. So I did not have a very traditional path to starting this business. And to be honest, I did not do it on purpose. I was in a long finance track, and I'd been doing various internships with that and had all this experience with that. And it wasn't until I was in my final finance intern experience that I started talking with people in the marketing department at that company. And they were really passionate about what they did. They sounded really excited all the time. And then I kind of realized, oh, shoot, I want to do that, not this. So when I kind of had that realization was right about the time I was about to graduate with my degree from college. So we started the job hunt process, and everyone wanted to hire me for finance and not marketing. So I fell into a contract role that was all I could get at the time for social media management. And it's not something I ever saw myself doing, but I ended up being good at it. They ended up seeing great growth, and I ended up enjoying it. And so from there, I kept getting word of mouth from that first client for other clients, and then doing good for them. And then I was kind of like, well, hey, I can just hire me and I can just make a whole business out of this. And here I am. And that's what I do now.
Yes, Emma, I love that backstory. It's one that I know is going to inspire so many listeners, because it really is. You followed what the opportunities that were presenting to you were. And that's something that is true of so many of our entrepreneurial stories, is go where the doors are open. And I love how you followed those open doors all along the way. And it's always fascinating to me. Emma, you are for sure much younger than I am, which is always, I started my first business when I was 19. So it was after the freshman year of college, and that business grew into something beyond anything I could have ever dreamed of, and that was a blog. But for your generation, I feel like social media is just so natural. Talk to us about your relationship with social media before you ever started your business, and how has it changed today?
Yeah, totally. Well, it's something that, for better or worse, I have grown up with since I think it was middle school, like sixth grade. I mean, people were starting to talk about that, and then Instagram came out, and it was very quickly this thing where it was like, oh, you're not on it. So kind of growing up with it since really sixth grade, almost as long as I can remember, I feel like we have such an in-depth understanding of it. It's so like second nature that's kind of become the thing that I can tell clients that they like, right? Because sometimes they're thinking, oh, she's really young. But then I tell them, well, this is like what I do all day. So this is pretty second nature to me. And I think that as much as I did grow up with it personally using it, I enjoy much more using it for businesses. I find it more rewarding, and I think it's more fun. So I think my relationship with social media before business was kind of on the rocks. You know, I used it, but I didn't love it. But now that I've kind of transitioned to the other side, it's really interesting, and I do enjoy it. So it's been a good advantage.
Yeah, I love the fact that you talk about your age being the advantage there and also how you talk about viewing social media through the lens of business now, because I'll tell you what, Emma, when we first came across your work and invited you to come on the show today, it's right there on your website, which we'll talk about your website at the end of today's episode, but it's right there at the top of your website. You write, "We believe in small businesses. Everything we do is to help your business grow through intentional and strategic social media marketing decisions." And a lot of people think about social media as a chore. They know that they should and could be using it for their business, but they just say, what content am I going to create? How the heck do I turn that into actual growth? Give us those basics. What are things that people are doing wrong when it comes to business growth on social media? And what are some of the things that you realize, hey, this is actually a really viable path and this works for our other clients?
Yeah, well, I think the most common thing that we hear and the most common thing that doesn't really result in any consistent growth is people just going on when they feel like it and doing when they feel inspired or when they have an idea. But the reality is that typically doesn't come pretty consistently. So the first thing that we usually always sit down with our prospective clients or signed clients is we sit down and we say, okay, let's come up with kind of a written plan, a strategy that you follow or we follow, because we do this internally for ourselves and then we also do it externally with them. So I think it's really sitting down, writing out, okay, who is my audience? What do they want to see? And how often can I deliver that content they want to see? Because some people are thinking, okay, it's every day of the week. And I'm telling them, no, there's no way you're going to do that. Start with twice a week, maybe 3 times a week. Come up with this plan, follow your plan. 3 times a week, deliver this content that you talked about that you know your target audience wants. That's the first thing you have to do, is be consistent and have it speak to them. And I'd say the next thing that we've noticed really helps all of our clients, and no matter what vertical they're in, is showing their face. And I know everyone hears that a lot and they're like, oh my God, I don't want to do it. But it really is amazing how much more engagement and traction your business account gets when people get to know the owner and they get to know the employees and your story, because everyone has their story. And whether or not you think people will be interested in hearing it or not, they will. And so we really try to encourage our clients, just get on there, be brave, put yourself out there, and people will respond well. So coming up with your plan, speaking to your audience and letting them know you, because it's all about that relationship with the customer.
Yeah, Emma, you said that we might hear that advice about showing our face too much, but I'm going to say we don't hear it enough. So I'm going to call it out for listeners yet again. As a podcaster, I know what podcasting as a platform is like, is that people do have that intimate relationship. Whether they can or cannot see me, they hear my voice 5 days a week, and obviously you as our guests. And I think it's really important to build that personal relationship. I always remind people, even if you're a B2B business to business is a term we always throw out there, it's still people to people. You still need to have that human connection. So I love that advice that you just gave, Emma. And the other thing that I really want to call out that I think is so brilliant about your approach is that we all know what you measure is what you manage, and vice versa. What you can manage is what you measure. Right on your website, you guys only have 3 metrics. It's the 3 metrics that every time I go to your site, I see it: average monthly growth rate, average engagement rate, and average click-through rate. And I think it's fascinating that you're so public with those 3 metrics in particular, because it shows what you care about. Everybody talks about social media from just, hey, get all that content up there. And I love how honest you are about, don't tell yourself you're going to publish every day. You're not. Do it 3 days a week. That's so nice to hear from someone who is a social media strategist and content creator. And the other thing there is that average click-through rate. You're not doing this for content's sake. You're doing it to get people to your website, to get people interested in your products or services. How the heck do we turn social media into clicks?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And that's really the point of social media is, I mean, you can have 10,000 followers and 0 of them be customers. And then what are you doing, right? Because that's not going to make you any money. So ultimately, we're going for clicks. We're going through conversions. There's a whole funnel to it that we map out ahead of time. But I think at the end of the day, it just goes back to that first thing that I said about sitting down and really defining who your persona is, who is your target market and what do they want to see? And then being really creative in how you can give them that. And if you do that well, that's how you get those clicks and that's how you get that interest. And it's really, really cool to see. And it's really rewarding to see when you start to see those conversions come through and you can really reflect back and be like, okay, this is what worked, let's do this again. And, just constantly learning from that.
Yeah, I love that perspective because so many of these answers, Emma, you keep bringing it back to the people on the other side. We as entrepreneurs like to make social media about ourselves and put all the pressure on us to have the perfect things to say and perfect content to create. But ultimately, it's about the people who are following us. It's about serving them. And if you do that, they'll naturally want to click. You won't even have to stress that. So I love that perspective and seeing how intentional and strategic you are about the who, the customer avatar behind it, which leads us to, it's always such a big topic of debate within the world of entrepreneurship. And I'm sure you hear it even more in the social media world about which platform should we be on? Obviously, so much of that is driven by who our ideal customer is. But let's face it, there are billions of social media users every single day. They're all on all these different platforms. Where the heck should we even start as far as platforms go, Emma?
Oh gosh, well, that's a big question. And I think, like you said, just because there's so many of them, and yes, there are billions of people in all of them, it would not be realistic for you as a person, unless you're like a big corporation and you have got a team, to be on all of them and be doing it right, I should say. You could definitely have an account on all of them. But I'd say the first thing you want to think about is, who is it that, if you're thinking about who your audience is, who your customer is, where do they live? If it's a younger audience, it's probably not Facebook. If it's a business to business type of situation, it's probably more of a LinkedIn. So I think it's really important to sit down and think about where your people are before you make that decision, because where you decide you want to go, you have to put in work there, and they're all different. You can't just keep creating content for Instagram and then posting it on LinkedIn. You can repurpose it and make it a little different, but at the end of the day, all these different platforms are different and they require you to come up with slightly different content and different formatting. So sit down, think about, okay, who do I want to reach and where are they? And that can definitely take some research and some time and maybe even trial and error. But once you figure that out, just try to narrow it down to maybe just 2 to start that are realistic for you, that you can do well and that your people are going to be on. So it's worth your time.
Yeah, Emma, I'm going to push you a little bit more to expand there, because I know this is such an important concept for listeners to hear about, is do not just copy and paste across all the different social media platforms. We've obviously all heard that advice before, and you talked about some of them have different contents, different formats. For me, for example, our team, we've been playing around with TikTok and YouTube Shorts, and we quickly realized YouTube Shorts, 60-second limit. Good luck uploading anything other than that, whereas TikTok, you can go a lot longer. So we're already realizing, holy cow, guys, we need different clips for different platforms. But beyond just the formatting, talk to us about how engagement changes across platforms, how the mood, the culture within LinkedIn is very different than the culture on Twitter, is very different than the culture on Instagram. Talk to us about that importance.
Yeah, totally. So, like you said, they are all just so different. I'd say LinkedIn really is like the suit and tie of all the social medias. It's very, very factual, very job-based. There's a lot of people who call themselves thought leaders, which is great. Just constantly commenting on industry trends, et cetera, et cetera. It's not really a space where you can post a silly video, but then you've got next to that TikTok, and it's just like the complete opposite. And the thing about TikTok that I find really interesting in my experience with clients is most all engagement comes from For You page. It's really not followers. And I'm sure that fluctuates from account to account, but in my experience, TikTok is For You page. It's 100% where's the algorithm going. LinkedIn is largely your following. Yes, you're reaching new people, but not to the extent it is on TikTok. And Instagram is a little bit of a mixed bag. It kind of depends on how well you're doing it, because you can reach a lot of new eyes, but also a lot more of your followers are going to see what you put out there than on something like TikTok. And I think especially, this just happened, Instagram coming out with Threads. Instagram is kind of like a mashup of all of them together, right? Because it's like, now you do have those text only posts with Threads, but you also have Reels, which is like TikTok. And then you also have photos, which is Instagram, but also Facebook. So it's such a big question. It's kind of tough to break all that down, but I would say it does change a lot. And the thing that I notice the most with engagement is really just where it comes from in terms of followers versus non-followers. And TikTok is a super standout to me among all of them, of you're just reaching new people every time, For You page. So
yeah, Emma, I knew it was such a loaded question when I threw it your way, and I think you did an incredible job at summing it up, because you raised probably a topic that we don't talk about enough in the world of entrepreneurship when it comes to social media, which is, you summed it up so succinctly. I was like, how do I even ask Emma about this? But you said it. It's about followers versus non-followers, and who can I reach? And that's what's fascinating to me about TikTok is, with zero, literally we had 0 followers for this podcast when we just started experimenting with TikTok. And some of these TikTok uploads that we had 300 or more. I remember when I did my first ever TikTok, it was just a video about Tampa, Florida. Now it's like 30,000 views on TikTok, which, by the way, I have like no following on TikTok. So I think it's fascinating. So that's something that I think is really discouraging for people about the more follower-based platforms like Instagram, for example, is if I only have 100 people on Instagram, I'm only going to see maximum of 100 people typically. What are those ways? Talking about growth, talking about reaching new audiences. What are some of the things that you know that the rest of us entrepreneurs don't know?
Yeah, well, I think Instagram in specific is probably the most straightforward in my mind to reach more new eyes. And that's because at the end of the day, it comes down to, a lot of big things, but I'll try to sum it up into 3 big things. One of those is being social, because at the end of the day, social media was created for you to be social on it. So if you go on there as your business and you go comment on other people's things, this can be new people, this doesn't have to be your followers, and really give out that engagement, you will get that engagement back, and that will result in your content being pushed out to more new people. Because if people are commenting on your stuff as a result of you going out and commenting and being social first, that's going to tell Instagram, oh, this is interesting. This is good content. More people, like the people who commented, are going to want to see this. So that's a really cool thing you can do, is really just be strategic with who you're commenting with, engaging with. It shouldn't just be like emoji here, emoji there, but think about it, have it make sense. And when they comment back, that is going to result in more eyes on your stuff. And it's going to make you look a little bit cooler, if we're being honest, because if you have way more comments and way more likes, it's kind of like almost social pressure. People look at it and they're like, oh, wait, that's actually really interesting. I'd say, another thing with that is just being really, really consistent. And I know I said that before, and that is not the most exciting advice, but if we're being honest here, if you do want to see growth, you really do have to keep showing up and keep being consistent. And that doesn't just mean with posting, but that means with that engagement too, right? Because you've got to keep showing up. You've got to really give your business a personality, make it interesting. Think like, okay, if this business had a voice, what would they say? And then go out and say it. And, I think third and foremost is, especially with Instagram, content is super important, but also, aesthetics are important too. And that's not just to say you want a pretty looking account. That's if you really think about it and you go and you look at 2 different accounts, like let's say they're food accounts, and one of them has these beautiful pictures of their food and you can see people happy eating in their restaurant. And the other one's like this dim lighting, not really clear what they offer. Who are you going to go to eat with? You're going to go to the one with the pretty pictures and the aesthetic feed, because they look more trustworthy and they look more like something you'd want to be a part of. So there's a lot of things to it, but I think if you can those 3 things are a great start. Just giving out that engagement, being strategic in who you're talking to, making it aesthetic, and being consistent with all of that is a good foundation.
Yeah, listeners, Emma is making it easy for every single one of you to take action here today. She's not making social media seem complicated or difficult to start doing. It really is these simple things. But the reality is, so few people do the simple things right that if you just do these things right, you're going to start standing out. And Emma, who would have known that to be successful on social media, we need to be, social. I love the fact that you stick that in there. Yeah. So I want to pick on one thing because you said this, and I don't think we talk about it enough when it comes to social media for solopreneurs, especially let's focus on all those internet-based entrepreneurs who maybe offer online coaching or agencies or service-based businesses. And you said that we need to use our voice. But Emma, so many listeners are thinking, gosh, Emma, you're so good at talking about social media. You seem so polished. You've been doing this for a long time. You're very passionate about it. You know what your voice is. You're comfortable appearing on camera, whether it's in photos or on video or on a podcast interview. How the heck do I find my voice? What is my voice and how do I even go about establishing it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy and it's definitely scary to start, but I'd say if you're not sure where to start, you don't really know what your voice is or what it might be, just try something. Just try something. Try a certain tone of voice, try a certain kind of take. And if you don't like it and it doesn't resonate with your audience, it's okay to pivot and try something else. But you have to try in the first place before you can know if it's going to work or not. I mean, I think even our own frame marketing brand voice has evolved since it started, just as we kind of learn what really is resonating, what doesn't resonate, what we enjoy doing. I mean, you want to enjoy what you're saying. You want to enjoy what you're talking about. So just find a place, and this is probably going to come from trial and error, of where you're having a good time and it also feels authentic to you. And if you don't get it right the first time, just try again and you will figure it out. The more and more you do it and the more and more you put yourself out there, the easier it'll get. And it's never going to seem super, in the beginning, it might seem scary and it's never going to seem super easy, but just do it scared and it will get better. I promise. I've been through the same journey and you learn a lot about yourself too.
Yeah, Emma, again, such simple but very actionable advice for our listeners. You're never going to find your voice without actually just putting it out there. It's kind of like if you're standing in the mall and you're saying, where is Best Buy? And you just stand there thinking about where Best Buy is. No, just pick a direction and go. And if you're wrong, you'll walk the other direction, but you have to start moving. So I love that advice, Emma. Now, the one thing that is particularly, it's overwhelming and frightening. You talk about doing it scared for so many people is, you already talked about the Instagram aesthetic. How many times? I'm a big sucker for coffee shops. Heck, you live in the Pacific Northwest. You guys must have so many cool coffee shops out there, but we know the coffee shops that have the Instagram aesthetic. It looks like an Instagrammable place when we walk in, but let's keep picking on the solopreneurs who are online based, who don't have a physical business, who don't have a coffee shop to show. They're thinking, gosh, does this mean I have to be one of those people that has a professional photo shoot? What is my content actually going to be on so many of these visual based platforms? What's your answer for those people, Emma?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can definitely get harder and harder as, if you don't have a physical space, we don't either. So what we did, and what I would say you can do if you're that solopreneur, not really sure, you don't have, an office space to show off, is I would start by making some templates. And you can do that in Canva. It doesn't have to be difficult, but making some templates that fit your aesthetic. And all those templates should look branded. They should look like they go together. And, with those templates, if you are feeling ready and brave to show your face off or show off, it can be different pieces of your life, right? Just being personal, showing off a day in the life, showing off morning routine, things like that. I would pick a kind of like a preset, or if you're going to edit your photos or a filter, whatever you're going to do if you're not ready to go get that personal photo shoot done, because I know that that's, expensive and that's not really something that's on everyone's mind, but pick kind of a look, if you will, whether that is how you edit it, how the lighting is, something consistent that's in all of your photos. And you can do this on your iPhone. I mean, I take a lot of our photos on my iPhone and you would never know. So with that, so do the photos, but really important is do the templates. And you want to have those for your grid and your story, because everything is a different size and everything's always changing, but you really just want to have that consistent look and feel. So even if you are a solopreneur, when someone comes across you and your platform, they're like, oh, that's the same tone of voice, that's the same look, that's the same aesthetic, that must be so-and-so. because that's really what a brand is. It's all of those things together. So you have to think about every single element. But just visually, the templates and some sort of consistent photo, if you can do it, is great. It's a great start.
Yeah, Emma, honestly, I feel like I'm lobbing you such difficult, loaded, and broad questions today, and you are just crushing all of these. And the reason is I think it comes so naturally to you is I'm going to toot your horn for a little bit here, is that you don't just say these things and you don't just do these things for clients. You also do these things for yourself and for your own business, which is why I'm so excited for listeners to check out your company's Instagram, which again, we'll talk about at the end, but spoiler alert, it's Frame Marketing, as in Frame MKTG. So that's the way that people can find you on Instagram. But I think it's fascinating because you are doing all of these things and people can go onto your own. Too often as entrepreneurs, I love that phrase, the cobbler's son has no shoes. It's because when I owned an SEO agency, I was too busy to do my own SEO because I was working on client accounts. But you always find the time. And when people go on your Instagram, they're going to see so many different types of content. You have client testimonials on there. You've got thank you for when we hit follower milestones. You have information about how you guys onboard clients. You have genuinely helpful information about social media, team member profiles. You're doing all these different types of content. And I feel like that's something that overwhelms so many people is they don't even know what to post. Give us some of what's in your playbook. When you sit down to create a social media post, is it a checklist of 30 different content types you turn to? How are you coming up with these?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, this definitely has evolved from when we started, but typically what we do now is we sit down and I'll batch like 2 weeks in advance, just so I'm always ahead, and then I can focus on client accounts. But we have about 5 main topics that everything that we post should fit into and should make sense. So of the ones that you just mentioned, one of those being milestones. So we like to share, when something important happens, or it doesn't even have to be a big thing. I think just celebrating the small milestones. So anytime we have, like, if there's a follower mark, if it's a really cool client that we wanted to show off, anything like that, that'd be a big one. Another one is showing off things about our team, because like I said before, people love to know about people. And that's why we do those kind of company employee spotlight type things, just to show off who we are, who works here, et cetera, et cetera. And that's really fun because you can be creative with that. It doesn't just have to be a photo. It can be a little video they make. And these can be repeated because you have to remember, if you're ever out of ideas, you're not, because it's such a small percentage of your followers that are really going to see every single thing you post. So you can always kind of repurpose and recycle. I'm getting off track. But another one of the things is behind the scenes. So we kind of like to show, behind the scenes, what's it like to be a client, which is kind of what you saw in that onboarding process. We'll post results, like snapshots of results and what that looks like, because, until you show people you can actually do what you say you do, I think there's an element of, oh, is this for real? So that's just 3 we have 5 in total, but it's really helpful to have that direction of, like, these are the big buckets that we want to talk about. And we know that everything that we say and post has to fit into one of those. And if it doesn't fit, it either doesn't belong on our page because it's not a part of our content guide, or we need to evolve our content guide if it seems like something we should really have on there. So
Yeah, Emma, thanks for sharing your thoughts so transparently with all of us, because it really does. It just continues to show us how strategic and intentional you are about all things social, which is why one thing that really caught my eye about the way that you guys operate at Frame Marketing is you guys also offer a social media audit. And that's where you go in, and whether someone has already started their social media accounts and they say, hey, help me, I'm not making progress, or they want to have an extra set of eyes to do that competitive research, to come up with these types of content pillars. You guys operate there. Talk to us about the social media audit. I think it's such a brilliant strategy and service offering that you give to other entrepreneurs and businesses.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I think it's something that a lot of people overlook and don't want to do. And, it's not the most glamorous thing to do. I don't wake up and go, wow, I can't wait to do a social media audit. But it's important, because really what it is digging into someone's account and looking at, okay, what are we doing that's working? What are we doing that's not working? Because that's something that, especially for busy business owners, they're not doing this because it's the last thing on their to-do list. And you have to, because if you never look back and see what worked well for you, you can't really evolve your strategy to be that and to grow with that. So what we do is we'll sit down, and this is typically most common with Instagram. It can be done with anything though. And we'll, take a look back at probably their last year, depends how often they post. But if it's typically in an active account, we'll look at the past year and just really see, okay, what was the best performing thing? What was the worst performing thing? And then what are your competitors doing that's working really well and that's not working really well? And kind of just trying to take the highlights, the best pieces of information from all these different places to come up with a new plan and a new guideline for them. So it's really interesting because a lot of times the thing that does the best, the best performing piece of content is not what you would expect. It'll be like the thing that they put the least amount of work into. And it's the same for us too. I mean, I'll audit our own account and it's like, wow, that reel took me 3 seconds, but this other reel that I spent an hour editing got no engagement. So it is important to do that audit and go back and just take a look at what's working and what's causing growth. Because it's usually, you'll be surprised.
Yeah, and it's something that we say so frequently here on this show is that success leaves clues. And so all of you listeners thinking about how the heck you're going to succeed in this, there's people like Emma who you hear how of service that she is and how her agency operates, that she has these insights. You don't have to wonder by yourself and just kind of guess. You can leverage experts. And also, Emma just revealed to you, you can look at your competitors. That's what Success Leaves Clues is all about, is that you don't have to ever reinvent the wheel. Look at what's already working, not only inside of your own industry, but use that pollination from other industries to see what's working. So Emma, gosh, we could talk about so many of these things. As we come towards the end though, I always love giving guests, I feel like I've given you so many broad general questions, but this is for sure the hardest because I'm going to ask you to summarize all these good things that we talked about for listeners here today. We talked about content types. We talked about the actual different platforms. We talked about using your voice, the aesthetics, all these different things. But what's one action that you think listeners should take today, walking away from this episode, in order to start growing and leveraging their social media presence for business?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, I did kind of give you a laundry list of things that you could do and that would be great to do if you have the time and energy. But, if there's one thing that you take away from all of this that I don't think I've said enough, is really just to be authentic. Make sure that you're being yourself, and that when you go through that checklist of, oh my gosh, I need templates, I need brand voice, I need photos, make sure it's authentic to you and you're proud of it and it feels like good for you. It feels good for your brand, because that is going to show through more than anything else. So I would definitely challenge you to just try and stick to yourself, be authentic, and it'll always work out for you.
Yes, absolutely. I love that perspective, Emma. And again, it's something that you practice, what you preach. We can all see it, not only in the way that you show up on your socials, but also the way you showed up for all of us here in this podcast episode today. I know that listeners are going to be chomping at the bit to see more of your work. I'm telling you, listeners, I'm going to toot Emma's horn just one more time before I open the stage for her to tell you where to go from here. But her website is beautiful. You're going to see the consistent brand aesthetic, as far as you'll see consistent fonts across her website, her socials, everything she does. You're going to see how aligned it is with the way that she showed up in this episode here today. So definitely visit her website, check out her socials. Emma, I'm going to give you the stage now. Tell listeners where the heck they can go to find that website, to find your socials, where they should go to learn all the awesome stuff that you're up to.
Yes, thank you, Brian. So everything that we do and have is at Frame MKTG. So that's framemktg.com for the website. That's at Frame MKTG for the Instagram handle, TikTok. LinkedIn is Frame Marketing, all out together. But that is the handle that all of our stuff lives under. And that's where you can find more. So thank you.
Yes, and listeners, you know the drill. You don't have to remember all of those. Just check wherever it is that you're tuning into today's episode. We are linking to Emma's business's website, Frame Marketing, which is at framemktg.com. That's Frame Marketing. And you'll also find links to all of their socials down below wherever it is that you're tuning in. So check out the show notes. Otherwise, Emma, thank you so much for joining us today on the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.